Joining us now is former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Professor John Yoo. Professor, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I want to start with the impossible because you're smart. You're a law professor. Prosecutors don't live in monasteries. I mean, they have families and friends and opinions like everyone else. And on the other hand, surely there is some prosecutor out there who hasn't donated money or had a family member donate money to a political candidate. So how should our viewers kind of view Jack Smith and the relevance of the political leanings of his family members?
Trey, it's great to be with you again. First, what we should focus on is that this is an attempt to pretend that there's no political influence at all on prosecutors, and that's just not the case. As you brought out, prosecutors are human beings. They have families. Some of them give money to political donations and political donations. Some of them support candidates. They all vote, or most of them will vote. So you can't pretend there's some kind of robotic, pure prosecutor. And then second, what's the real answer for that when we admit that prosecutors are people too? Although I don't know if that was true about you, Trey, when you were a prosecutor. I'm sure you were pure as snow and were robotic as possible. But look, we're all human beings. So what is the real solution under our Constitution for this problem? It's that there's political responsibility and accountability. The president is ultimately responsible for the prosecutions of the executive branch. He is the person who takes care that the laws are faithfully executed. Merrick Garland works for Joe Biden, and ultimately Smith works for Merrick Garland. And this pretense of having a special counsel is an attempt to pretend that the investigation of President Trump or anybody subject to a special counsel is somehow going to be done in some perfect, non-human way. But it's just not true. And I think that's what really we should say is, what Smith does is ultimately the responsibility of Garland, and what Garland does is ultimately the responsibility of Joe Biden.
All right. Where is Jack Smith going to start, and how long do you think it will take him? I mean, are we going to be living with this throughout the pendency of the 2024 primary season? How long will this take?
Well, now, that's a really good question, because the longer it takes, the more likely it's going to get the Justice Department more embroiled into politics, when Garland's hope was that he was pulling the department and Biden out of politics. Now, one thing that Smith has in his favor is that the Justice Department, as you pointed out, has already been running these two investigations into January 6th and the classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. So it's not as if Smith has to create the whole teams, say, for example, as Bob Mueller had to, or as Ken Starr had to, from the ground up. There already are teams of prosecutors working on this. As we've seen with Mar-a-Lago, they're already got a grand jury out there and they're already issuing subpoenas. So they should be able to move with all deliberation. But the main problem, I think, is going to be that they've got a case that just directly involves politics. As you said, there's a candidate who's running for president, who's under investigation, who is also the former president, being investigated by his opponent in the last election and his likely opponent in the next election. Those political decisions are going to take a lot of time. And I actually be in favor of them taking them carefully and with all due diligence. I don't see why they don't wait until after the 2024 elections to really make those difficult calls.
All right, I'm gonna end by asking you another tough question, but you're smart, so you're used to it. Candidate Hillary Clinton under investigation. Candidate Donald Trump under investigation. President Donald Trump under investigation. And now House Republicans are talking about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden being under some type of investigation, perhaps criminal. I mean, that does not sound like the United States of America of old, or maybe I haven't been reading history. I mean, it seems like the DOJ is really, really involved in politics. Is there any solution for that, or is that just where the facts take us?
Sure, I think you and I and a lot of other former DOJ alums could have some drag-out good debates about this, because on one side, people say no one should be above the law. If there's candidates, even office holders who violate the law, they should be investigated and prosecuted. But I share what I think is your reluctance that I detect there, which is I do feel like we are using the criminal justice system more and more to settle our political disputes. I would much rather have Hillary Clinton not investigate it, and let the people decide on her, as they did in 2016. And I was saying, don't impeach Donald Trump. Let the voters decide in 2020, which they did. And I would also say, don't use special counsel prosecutions to go after Donald Trump. Let the people decide. Some people think the people decided already in 2022 what they think of Donald Trump. They will now have the opportunity to give their thumbs up or thumbs down on Donald Trump again in the 2024 election. Let's do it that way rather than getting it all entangled in the criminal justice system, which pulls enormous resources away from what the Justice Department should be doing, which is going after really serious crimes, violent crimes, drug crimes, immigration-related issues, and so on.
Politics ruins almost everything, Professor, including the justice system, which is something you and I have a lot of respect for. Professor John Yoo, thank you for joining us again on another Sunday night. Take care.
Thanks, Trey. Great to be with you again.